Hi, class. Today we're going to talk about genres or kinds of stories that are all about me. So these are genres of all about me stories. These are different ways to tell a story about a person's life. There are really so many ways to tell stories about a person's life or your own life. Today we're going to talk about 6 different kinds of stories or genres that tell about a person's life or about your own life. They are a personal narrative, a journal, a diary, a biography, an interview, and a memoir. We're going to look at some features of each one, each kind of story. And then we're going to find those features in some stories. Okay? And lastly, we're going to compare and contrast or talk about how each one is different and the same. Okay. And the last thing that I want to do is to have you guys to choose one of the stories and write one, either about your own life or about the life of someone you know. All right, so let's look at the first one. The first one is called a personal narrative. Okay, let's look at the features of a personal narrative. So, a personal narrative is a story that's told about a specific event in the writer's life. It's a story about something that happened to the writer. Okay? Personal narratives are usually true, but they can have some things that are made up. The person telling the story or the point of view is always first person. That means that the person that's telling the story is the narrator. He's telling his or her own story. A lot of times in the personal narrative, you'll see pronouns like I, me, us, we. Those are pronouns associated with the first person point of view. Personal narrative, again, is about an event in a person's life, and it's always told in a narrative form, meaning it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. All right, let's look at the next one. So the next kind of story is called an interview. An interview is a story that's told by two people using questions and answers. The interviewer is the person who asks the question, and the interviewee is the person who answers the questions. It's usually a spoken story or an oral story. It's one on one, so that the person who's telling the story, the interviewee, is very comfortable telling his or her story. Again, the story is a true story in an interview, but it can also be someone's opinion about something. So that's the interview. The next story we're going to look at, the next kind of story, is called a journal. And a journal is a personal story that the author himself or herself writes. And it's a series of daily entries or short written thoughts about what is happening in that person's life. The next kind of story is called a diary. A diary is a kind of story where the author writes about what happens to him or her in a special book called a diary. Each entry is written with the date and just information about the events of the day. Diary entries are very informal and they're very personal. Sometimes the language in a diary is not correct, but again, it's written for the person. It's usually not written so that it's going to be seen by someone else. It's usually private. So sometimes it may not be. It may be written in informal language, or it may not be written in complete sentences. Next one we're going to look at is a biography. So a biography is a detailed story about someone's life. It has lots of information. It's more than just events. It's about the person's entire life. And it's usually organized chronologically, meaning that it's in order of the earlier events in a person's life to the later events in a person's life. A biography is usually written by another person. It is nonfiction, so it's true information, and sometimes there are photographs in a biography. One other thing, that if the person writes about their own life, that's called an autobiography. That's when the person writes about their own life. A biography. And the last one we're going to look at is called a memoir. So, a memoir is a story that's written by the writer about his or her own memories and, and facts about an event or a series of events. It's in a narrative form. It does have a beginning, middle, and end, and it's usually true to the extent that the person remembers. It's how the person remembers those events. So it's an a narrative about events or facts in a person's life. All right, so that's all of our 6 genres of all about me stories. And just to review, they are personal narrative, interview, journal, diary, biography, and a memoir.